Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss what is JavaScript Executor in Selenium. So first we'll discuss what JavaScript Executor is, why we need to use JavaScript Executor, and how to use it. So let's get started. Before understanding what JavaScript Executor is, first let us understand what JavaScript is. So for that, we need a basic understanding of client-server communication. So let's say, for example, this is my server. Server is nothing but like, let's say, for example, it's an application. So an application deployed on a server, right? Now, how do we communicate with the application is, say, for example, this is a web-based application, right? So how do we communicate with that is, we do have browser, right? As a user, so this is the user, or you can call it as client. And how do browser communicate with the server, right? So usually there will be an URL of the server. So the host name :port or the direct URL of the application, which we use to communicate to the server from the browser, right? So for that, browser actually sends a request to the server using the URL, right? Say for example, www.mywebsite.com, something like this, right? Then actually application responds to the browser, right? So it usually responds like, so on the application, there will be the application code, right? So the starting page usually will be index.js or welcome.js, something like that, right? So the index.js will be sent to the browser. So JS here represents the JavaScript. So when this is sent back to the client, so the browser renders this JavaScript, index.javascript, and that is what we see on the browser, which we call it as user interface. In short form, we call it as UI of the application, right? So that's where user actually uses that as an interface to communicate with the application. So the browser, what it does, it actually renders the JavaScript file sent by the server, and it actually shows to the user on the browser, right? So this is the basic client and server communication, and how the JavaScript is rendered by the browser, right? So this is about JavaScript. Now, like what do we wanted to we wanted to understand JavaScript executor, right? So before that, JavaScript, so whatever we wanted to show the elements on the browser, we can actually write that code into the JavaScript, in a file, and we actually deploy it as part of the application on the server. So that will be rendered by the browser. Now, what do we this is the basic understanding of JavaScript, right? Now, what is JavaScript executor? So let's actually see what JavaScript executor is. JavaScript executor, that too in Selenium, right? So if you see, JavaScript executor is a package within the Selenium. So org.openqa.selenium is a Selenium package, you know. So JavaScript executor is an interface within this package, and you can see the implementing classes: Chromedriver, Chromium driver, Edge, Firefox, Internet Opera, all the list of browsers supported by Selenium. All these browser drivers are implementing the JavaScript executor interface. So we can actually, you know, have the reference of JavaScript executor and get the instance of this drivers, any of these drivers, and use the JavaScript executor interface, right? So this is what JavaScript executor is. Now, why do we need to use the JavaScript executor? So there are in some cases, right? So when we automate using Selenium WebDriver, the elements might not be interactable. Say, for example, for one run, it might not be a problem, right? So for some runs, it might be an issue. So it will be intermittent. So you don't know why it's failing. So in such cases, or in some cases, we will not be able to locate the elements using the Selenium locators. So in such cases, we actually use JavaScript executor. Locators not working, or have issue with locators. In such cases, we actually use the JavaScript executor interface, right? And the other case is, say for example, I have a website like this, right? I wanted to, so these, what are the web elements present on this screen, right? So I can interact, we can interact this with the Selenium locator. But if you see here, the scroll bar, right? So this is what we call as scroll bar on the rightmost side, right? So this is used to view the complete web page, right? So within this screen, you can't actually view the complete web page. So the web page is still there, right? And you can only view the complete page by scrolling, by using this scroll bar. See, I am holding with my mouse and actually dragging it down till end of the page, right? So this is how we can scroll down. But how do we do this using Selenium? How do we automate this? So there is no built-in method to actually automate this scroll bar. As if you can see, this scroll bar is not actually part of the, this web page. So this is actually automatically, browser knows that this web page is so long, and it actually automatically is providing this scroll bar. So we have like, we can't actually call this scroll bar or locate this scroll bar using the Selenium locators. So definitely in such cases, we should be using the JavaScript executor. So as this can be controlled using JavaScript executor. So second case is scroll bar, to automate scroll bar, right? So there can be two scroll bars. Whatever we have seen is a vertical one. There could be a horizontal one as well. So there are, so these two scroll bars can be automated using JavaScript executor. And these are the main use cases of why you need to use the JavaScript executor in Selenium. Now let's go back to the JavaScript executor documentation and see the methods within the interface. So you can see here, there are two methods, or you can see the main methods are execute async script and execute script, execute async script and execute script. So execute script, again, it's overloaded. You can see it actually takes script, and it actually takes string as one parameter, and the second parameter is optional, like it's a varargs, which means you can provide 0 or more arguments. And execute script is overloaded. You can see it actually accepts script key and 0 or no arguments as well. And we can also see another method called execute async script, which actually takes string and varargs as the arguments, right? Varargs. So you can see the description as well. So if you read the execute script description, it executes the JavaScript in the context of the currently selected frame or window. Fine. And what is async script is, it also executes the asynchronous piece of JavaScript in the context of the currently selected frame or window. So if you see, if you read the description, they both seem to be same, right? But there is a slight difference here. If you see here, it says asynchronous piece of JavaScript, right? So what it means, what we mean by asynchronous piece of code is, so this piece of code or this script will be executed while the rest of the web page continues parsing. So it doesn't wait for the complete page to be parsed. So while rest of the page continues to be parsed, this script will be executed. So which actually enhances the responsiveness and also the application performance. So in such cases, we use the execute async script method, right? So these are the two methods. So mainly, we are going to use these two methods, async script and execute script, right? So now let's see an example on each of these. So I already created a class JavaScript executor script demo. So first we'll see JavaScript executor will execute script method. So this method we are going to see first. So for that, what I'll do is let's take an example of browserstack.com. So you can see here, right? It actually, this is a simple sign-in page where we are going to provide email and password, and we are going to hit the sign me in button here. So this we can actually do it using the Selenium locators as well, but I'm going to show you how to use this method, JavaScript execute script method, right? So the first thing is we wanted to launch the Chrome browser. So Chromedriver.setup. So I'm using WebDriver Manager here so that I don't need to download the Chrome executable, which is compatible with the Chrome. That will be done automatically. So the Chrome executable will be downloaded, which is compatible with my browser, and the path will be set to the webdriver.chrome.driver variable, right? So this we have discussed in the previous videos. Now, what we wanted to do, we wanted to create an WebDriver instance. WebDriver instance and instantiate to the Chrome browser, right? So Chromedriver. Now, once we have the WebDriver instance, we create the JavaScript executor reference. I'll name it as JS, and we'll cast it to JavaScript executor. So driver is an instance of Chromedriver, and we can cast it to JavaScript executor as JavaScript as a Chromedriver is a class which is implementing the JavaScript executor. We have seen this. So you can see here. So Chromedriver is an interface which is in class which is implementing the JavaScript executor interface, right? Now, we will navigate to this website. We are actually trying to automate this login screen now, okay, using JavaScript executor. So how do we do that? We navigated to that. Now we wanted to find the locators of this. So using JavaScript executor, how do we do that? JS dot execute script. I'm going to use the execute script which takes the string as a parameter, right? And for now, I'm not going to pass any arguments. Execute script document dot get element by ID. So this is the script we need to write to actually locate the element by ID in JavaScript. Okay. So let's go back and locate this email field and try to get the ID of it. So this is the ID of it. I'm going to pass it here. So it looks much similar to Selenium WebDriver locators, right? Dot value, and intentionally I'm providing some invalid email ID here. Okay. And in the same way, I'm going to actually provide document dot get element by ID. Provide the locator for password as well. This is the ID, user underscore password. Provide the value to it. I'll just provide something here, which is again like not the correct one. So it's an invalid one. And we are not going to pass any arguments again. Now, we wanted to click on the, once we provide the username or email and password, we wanted to click on this sign me in button, right? So let's locate this, and again we can use ID here. But this time what we are going to do is we'll use JavaScript dot. So what we'll do is we'll find it using driver dot find element method by dot ID, right? And let's actually capture this web element into some object, right? Web element object. What we'll call it as, it's a button, right? So let's call it as button. What we are going to do now is we'll use the JavaScript execute script itself again, but this time we are going to pass the argument to it. So you can see here, execute script, it actually takes two parameters, script and varargs, right? So you can pass 0 or more arguments. Till now, we didn't pass like any arguments, right? we just used one argument to the execute script, one parameter. So the second parameter are the varargs. Now I'm going to pass one argument to it, execute script document dot get element by ID, and then so we already found the element by ID there, right? So you can see it here in the button. This will be our argument. So we just need to say that it's an argument. Write the script here. I'm going to pass one argument, which is the first argument. Just click on it is what we are going to tell here. And each statement in JavaScript, so as in Java, is the delimiter is semicolon. So use semicolon after each statement here, and we can pass the argument button here. So you can see, so the first two in the first two lines, like email and password, we have written the script here. This is completely JavaScript, and we are trying to set the value here to the email. And in the second line, we tried to set the password here, right? Then what we did was we created a web element object, like we found the element by ID using Selenium WebDriver, and that web element object, we are actually trying to pass it as the argument to the script. So we just wanted to see, like in the execute script, it has like two parameters, right? So we just wanted to see how that works. That's the reason we are passing it like this. So the first parameter will be the script, which says argument of 0 dot click. What is argument of 0? Whatever you provide here. So as the first argument. So I'm providing the first argument as button. So this will be replaced as button dot click. And what we'll do is, anyway, this is this invalid credentials, right? We are going to get an error. So we'll write some user defined statement here. Like what we'll do is, you just need to know the basics of JavaScript for writing all this, just the basics. Like how do we actually write an alert? So when we use an alert method, right? So a pop-up gets displayed on the web page. So see, for example, whatever I'm writing here, I'll just put it like enter correct login credentials. That's it. So what did we do here is, like we just launched the Chrome browser, and created the WebDriver instance. We created the reference for JavaScript executor, and you can see here WebDriver instance. We actually casted it to JavaScript executor reference, and then we navigated to a website using the JavaScript executor reference. We are actually using the execute script method, right? And we are writing some script here, which is a JavaScript to provide the values to user email and password. And just we wanted to see that how execute script method works with two parameters. We are using like this to click on the button, sign me in button, right? And we wanted to also write some script, JavaScript, where it actually displays some alert or a pop-up on the web page. That's the reason we have written this code. Now let me execute this code and see. So it has to navigate to this URL and try for email and password. Click on the submit button. Then we should be seeing an alert here. Yeah, Chromedriver was started successfully. Okay, we didn't maximize the window. And you can see here, it tried, it clicked on sign me in, and you can see enter correct login credentials is what it is saying. It's not actually coming from the application. This is what the alert which we wrote as a JavaScript, right? So this is how we need to use execute script method of JavaScript executor. So you just need to write the script, whatever you wanted to execute, and then you can pass the parameters as well here. So this is all about JavaScript JavaScript executor and like executeScript method. Now we'll see JavaScript execute async script method. We'll remove this. And for that, what we are going to do is we'll take this example. The second one, like if you see here, the first one, look, if locators are not working, this is how we need to handle the locators, right? The second one is scroll bar, right? So how do you automate the scroll bar? That we are going to see now. So the scroll bar will be like this, and I wanted to scroll this till the end of the page to view the end of the page, right? That's what we are going to automate now. So let's go back, and we need to take the URL. We need to navigate to this URL. And then JavaScript dot execute async script. So first I'll show you how do we automate this using execute script. Then we'll see async script, right? So using execute script also, we can actually automate the scroll bar. So there is no issue. Only thing is like we wanted to see how async script also. So we'll also see that afterwards, after seeing execute script, right? Using execute script method, we are going to automate the scroll bar now, where we are going to scroll the scroll bar vertically, right? Now we'll write a small script here. What we wanted to do, we wanted to window dot scroll by, we wanted to scroll vertically, right? So in case you wanted to scroll the scroll bar vertically, so we need to pass two parameters to the scroll by method, window dot scroll by, and we need to pass x and y. These are the coordinates. Like the first one represents the x coordinate, like how much you wanted to scroll horizontally, and the second parameter actually represents the y coordinate, which actually represents the how much you wanted to scroll vertically. So the positive value actually scrolls down, and the negative value scrolls to the top for the y coordinate. Right now, what we'll do is we'll scroll till end of the page. So for that, how do we know the how many pixels we wanted to scroll? So for that, you can just see document dot body scroll height actually gives you the maximum height of the scroll bar. So till that I wanted to scroll down is what we have put here, right? So with this, it actually scrolls to the end of the page. Let's verify now. Yes, you can see. So within this web page, we are at the end of the page, right? This is fine. Now, how to use async script? So as already discussed, when we use async script, so the script will be async script, whatever we pass it here, the script will be executed while rest of the page continues parsing. So which actually enhances the responsiveness and also the application performance. So in such cases, we can actually use the async script. But when you use async script here, right? So this will not work. Let's verify that. I'll show you. Okay, it works. So if you see, this works, but it never comes out of the program. If you see, right? So let's wait for some time. So we should get a timeout exception. The script executed, but it doesn't come back, like come out of the function. Yes, now you can see here. See, it just says script timeout. So this is asynchronous script, and let's read the documentation. So you can see it executes the asynchronous piece of JavaScript in the context of the currently selected frame or window. Unlike executing the synchronous script, JavaScript, scripts executed with this method must explicitly signal they are finished, right, by invoking the provided callback. So we need to provide a callback saying that so the action has been completed, right? So this callback is always injected into the executed function as the last argument. So we need to have a callback as the last argument, and that should be part of the script. Only then we can actually use this execute async script. So you can also go through the documentation here, right? So the first argument passed to the callback function will be used as a script result. So these are the different, this value will be handled as follows. So these are the different uh, data types we can return. So you can also see the examples here. So we are going to use these examples itself. So you can actually copy it from here itself. What we need to have is the last argument. So how do you get the last argument is, you can copy this into your code and then we can see how it works, right? So you can see I'm declaring a variable callback, and how do I get the last argument? So you can also get read the documentation here. Execute async script. So if you click on this, it actually, you can see the documentation here. So when we use the async script, execute async script, right? So unlike executing synchronous JavaScript, scripts executed here in this method must explicitly signal they are finished by invoking the provided callback. They have to signal that they are finished. So this callback is always injected into the executed function as the last argument. So that's the reason we are trying to get the last argument. So I declared a variable and trying to get the last argument. And how do we get the last argument is arguments actually start with index 0. So arguments.length -1 will be the last argument. So that's what we got it in the variable callback. Now, once we get the callback, then what we'll do is we just need to call this function. Okay, we had 2+ symbols here. So what did we do here is, so if you go through the documentation of async script, it clearly says, so it using this method must explicitly signal they are finished by invoking the provided callback, right? So we need to provide the callback that it is done, that we are finished. So for that, and also it clearly says it's always injected into the executed function as the last argument. It has to be the last argument. So we just declared some variable here. It can be any variable. It can be callback 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 like this, right? And then we are trying to get the last argument, and then finally we are calling that callback function here, right, within the JavaScript. So you don't need to worry about this. You can always have this. So whenever you wanted to use this as execute async script, you can always have this line like getting the last argument and in the first line, and whatever you wanted to perform as an action using JavaScript executor, you can put it here, and finally you can call this function callback, right? That's it. Then this execute async script will work without this script timeout. Let me show you. Or what we'll do is we'll just write a statement here which says like scroll successful. Yeah, this time you can see it scroll down, and let's wait. And you can also see here it actually come out of the program. So the program terminated successfully, and you can see scroll successful. So this is because we actually used as execute async script like how it was mentioned in the documentation. So that's the reason we didn't get the timeout exception and the scroll was successful, right? So you can also try it out. Another one like say for example, scroll down successful, right? And then you can do minus here. So what did we discuss when we are talking about window.scrollBy? So it actually takes x and y as parameters. X actually scrolls left to, in order to do a left scroll in the horizontal scroll bar, you need to give a negative value. If you wanted to move to the right, then you give a positive value. So in the same way, like y coordinate actually specifies the vertical scroll bar. Where you wanted to scroll down, you give a positive value. Where you wanted to scroll up, you give a negative value. So we are already, with this script, we are already at the end of the page, right? So this actually document.body.scroll height actually takes you to the end of the page. Now what we are doing minus of it. So this should take to the top of the page. Let's verify that. Yeah, it was very fast. So maybe if you wanted to check that, you can actually put some sleep time of some 3 seconds. Right? And also, once we navigate it, let's maximize this page. Driver dot manage dot window dot maximize. Now you can see. So it launches the browser, navigates to the URL, maximizes the page, scroll down to the end of the page, see, and after 3 seconds, scrolls up to the page, right? So this is how execute async script works, right? So the only difference between execute script and execute async script is, so this actually enhances the responsiveness and app performance. As the web page, rest of the web page contains parsing, the script which we have put here, so it gets executed, which actually saves some time, right? So that's the only difference. And for using execute async script, so we need to provide this last argument and actually call that as a callback, as a last statement, right? So this will be the extra 2 lines of script you need to include when you use the execute async script. For your use case, if you don't want it, like if you don't require like this specific uh, benefit, then you can go for execute script, where you can actually provide only your script here, like how we have seen execute script, right? So even execute, you can directly use execute script by writing the only JavaScript here, right? Right. So even this is JavaScript, but here it might look a bit complex, but you just need to follow the documentation. If you can follow the documentation, whatever is given in the documentation, you can see it here, right? Read this documentation and you can go through here an example also, and you can copy paste these 2 lines, so that you can actually use execute async script as well, right? So this is how we can actually use the JavaScript executor in Selenium. So in this video, we started with knowing what is JavaScript, what is JavaScript executor, why do we need it, and how to use the 2 methods of JavaScript executor in Selenium. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching.